What's up, everyone? Welcome to Mosaic. You did it. You made it here, and I am so glad that you're tuning in to this week's episode. It is on forgiveness, and I promise you, you will not regret it. Hang out with us and watch this whole thing. Now, here's the challenge for this week, okay? I want you to start a Mosaic watch party. You might be like, Matt, what is that? Well, it's very, very simple. All you need to do is invite some friends, some family members, some coworkers over to your house and have some food, watch the episode, hang out a little bit, and talk about the topic of that episode. That way you're growing together, you're hanging out together, you're talking about God, and you're learning from one another, and you're doing it all in community. Now, here's the deal. If you got any questions about how to start a watch party, well, I'm here for that. I can help you out. Send me an email at hello@southcrest.church, and that way I can point you in the right direction as to how to start a Mosaic watch party, how to invite people, what to do during the watch party. But again, it's very, very simple. Watch the episode, eat some food, and talk about the topic. And I promise you, you won't regret that either, hanging out with other people, talking about these Mosaic episodes. Now, let's get into today's episode on forgiveness, and I hope you enjoy it.
You know, I think everybody hates it when somebody says something really bad about them. They say something about you that's not true. You know, I can vividly remember the very first time that I was publicly humiliated in a major way when somebody said something about me that wasn't true when I was not a kid anymore, right? Not playing in the front yard and somebody says, you know, you're slow and you're not fast enough and you can't catch anything butterfingers, anything like that. But I was 16 years old and I had been working on this relationship with this girl for a couple weeks, and man, she was incredibly good looking. And I really was working my mojo with her. Things were going great. At the time, I happened to work at the mall at Chick-fil-A selling Christian chicken. And she worked next door at Baskin-Robbins selling ice cream. And so I'd kind of been working on things with her for a couple of weeks. And I was coming to work and she was coming to work, and we both happened to be on the escalator at the same time. And she just looked at me and just yelled in the middle of hundreds of people. She said, "You're a liar. You are just a liar. That's who you are." And I was devastated because I was like, what did I do? I mean, I've not lied about anything. What I was trying to do is just, you know, get a date with this girl, and we hadn't even gone out yet. And she said, well, that I'm a liar. And I instantly went into defense mode, and I was angry, and I was frustrated, and I just wanted to do something about it. And you know, the thing is, when somebody says something about you that's not true, you know, you want to say, hey, take it back. And you know, even if they want to, they can't take it back. You know, it's sort of like toothpaste out of the tube at that point, right? Because when somebody says something about you or does something to you, and you want to say, I wish we could go back in time and do something about that, but you can't. You can't do anything about it because it's there. It's out there. And you know, you can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. That doesn't work. It just gets more and more sticky and gross, and then it's awkward because you're walking around, I got toothpaste in my hand, what am I supposed to do with this, right? And so that's why when somebody says something about you or does something to you, especially when it's not true, it's awkward for them, it's awkward for you. You're like, hey, what am I going to do about this? And so what you want to do, of course, is you want to say, I want to clean this up. You know, I'm going to do something about it, or because it's gross and it's making our relationship be awful and awkward and all those kinds of things. And of course, the Bible tells us what we should do when we've got an awkward situation between us and someone else. It says that we should forgive them. And you know, and maybe one of the most well-known passages of the scripture in the Bible is the Lord's Prayer. It says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And there's that key word right there. Forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. So God, forgive us for what we've done that we shouldn't have done. And then it says, but forgive us as we have forgiven others. I'm like, uh-oh, that's a problem. Because a lot of us, we don't really want to forgive somebody when they've hurt us, when they've said something about us, when they've done something to us. And what's even more interesting is right after those verses in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus says two more things about forgiveness. And he says this in Matthew chapter 6, verse 14. He says, for if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive you. And so what happens is God says, I'll forgive you, but you've got to forgive the people who have hurt you first. But we know that, but we don't want to do it, do we? We struggle with that. If you're a Christ follower, you probably struggle with that. If you're not a Christ follower, you probably struggle with that. Everybody struggles with forgiving the people who have hurt them. And here's what we do. We get angry and we got a plan and we want to get revenge and we want to do something to them. You know, it's almost as if we said, here's what I can do. I would like to imprison them, because if I could imprison them, what would happen is I could control them and they can't do that to me anymore and they can't hurt me anymore because nobody enjoys being hurt. And here's the thing, you can get so wrapped up in determining that you want to imprison somebody, control somebody who has hurt you, and you say, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put them in prison. And so that's what you say, I'm gonna do that. But what happens is you end up imprisoning yourself.
My journey with forgiveness begins quite some time ago. Being in recovery and attending meetings at the time, I heard a person speaking at a meeting and shared about an experience he had as a child of sexual abuse. And I could relate to that because I experienced sexual abuse when I was a child. And one of the key things that he mentioned that I had a really difficult time with was he said that he had to learn to forgive the person that did these things to him. You know, it hit me emotionally when he said that because I related to that experience. So I got with him after the meeting and I said, man, how do you forgive somebody that has done something so vile to you, so awful to you? And he said, well, the Bible tells us that we need to forgive those who've trespassed against us because Jesus forgives us of our sins, our trespasses. And so it's kind of like a give and take situation. You would want to be forgiven for your trespasses. And so therefore we need to forgive others of their trespasses against us. Also, he said to me, and this is extremely important, that until I learned to forgive this person, that I would never be able to heal from it. And so that was huge, and I really couldn't get it. And so he said a couple of other things to me, like, the pain that you feel in yourself and the mistakes that you've made and the people that you've hurt, and the mistakes that you've done affect you negatively. So imagine the sickness and the hurt and the pain that this person must also carry with them. And it provides you with a little bit of compassion. And Ephesians says, be tender-hearted with one another. And it basically lays out that we should have compassion for one another and learn how to forgive. And so that was a very lengthy process for me to learn how to forgive this person for what I felt was a terrible violation. For me, the process required a lot of prayer and a lot of writing. Mainly because writing became my way of getting things outside of my head. And because it's very confusing in there when there's all this pain and this hurt and questions, why did this happen? What's going on? Why should I forgive this person? How do I forgive this person? So for me to write, got it out of here and got it down on paper, and it made the whole process a lot more simple. The key thing for me in my journey with forgiveness, the biggest factor was, in order for me to reconcile in my mind how I could forgive this person and why should I forgive this person, is that it came down to, he's a sinner. just like me. I sinned, he sinned. If I want forgiveness for the sins that I've committed, then I need to be willing to forgive those who sin against me. Even if I think their sin is 100 times worse than my sin, it doesn't really matter. And the bottom line is, at that time I didn't even realize that forgiveness was the key to allowing me the freedom to heal. The more I learned how to forgive, the more I could let go and the more I could heal from it, to the point now where I feel comfortable talking about it, because I'm sure there are other people out there who are waiting for that same type of person to speak something about it so that they can feel like they're not alone and they have hope, and there is a way to forgive that. I guess the last part of what I really learned about forgiveness is that forgiveness is always for us. It always frees us. It always breaks down the walls that we put up to keep us from being more like Jesus and following Jesus' path. Because look, Jesus forgave us and he provided that path for us to come and follow. So now it's our job to learn how to let go of the things that are keeping us away from him. And that is one of them.
I absolutely loved Joey's story. I'm so thankful to him for being vulnerable and opening up and sharing his journey. Man, what a journey, and living life with bitterness and unforgiveness and hurt, and then finally coming to a place of saying, God, I give it to you. God, I forgive them. Now, while we were filming Joey, he actually told me, he said, Matt, I want to help anybody out there that is ready to forgive someone in their life for past hurt or rejection or what have you. So Joey, along with myself, man, we're here for you. We would love to help you, point you in the right direction. All you have to do is send us an email at hello@southcrest.church, and we can point you in the right direction, give you some guidance on how to forgive someone that has wronged you in your life. Don't be afraid to reach out. We all go through difficult times. We're all dealing with something at some level, at some point in our life, and we need each other. We need each other. So please reach out to us, hello@southcrest.church. We would love to help you. Now let's carry on with the rest of this episode. Hope you enjoy.
All right, let's talk first about what happens if you are the person who has hurt someone and you know you're the person who's hurt someone. Let's talk about that first. You said something to your friend or to your spouse or to your child that you shouldn't have said, or you took advantage of somebody at work, or you cheated on something or did something that you shouldn't have done. Let's talk about that for a minute. How does that work? Because you go to that person that you know that you've hurt and you say, I want to talk with you for just a minute. Is that okay? And it's going to be a little awkward because they're like, what are you going to do now? Because you've hurt me previously. You're getting ready to hurt me again potentially. And so they may be a little anxious about you talking with them. But it's just like this. It's you saying you're going to lay down your agenda to serve them. That you're saying, I'm considering other people better than myself. And so what I want to do is to take a moment and I want to bring peace to a hostile situation. So it's very simply like this. You say to them, I'm sorry for what happened. I was mostly thinking of myself. And you say that phrase, and what happens is it ratchets down. They start to relax a little bit because they're like, oh, well, you're here to tell me that you did something you shouldn't have done, right? And then what's really important is you sit there and say, I'm sorry, and be very specific. If you're talking to your spouse, say, I'm sorry I yelled at you last night. I should not have lost my temper. That was my fault, not your fault. I'm the one who controls my temper, not you. I'm sorry for doing that. Next, I was wrong. I was wrong in assuming that you thought that about me. I should have done a better job communicating that. I'm sorry, I was wrong, and then, will you forgive me? Will you forgive me? Now here's what happens, is that starts to bring some peace and some healing to the situation, and maybe some things happen that you're not expecting to happen, and maybe that person says, you know what, I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have said what I said. I shouldn't have responded the way that I did. And so many times, if you'll take that first step and say, I want this relationship to be what it should be, it makes a huge difference. And that's how you start if you know you've hurt someone. But on the other hand, if you're the one who's been hurt, you know what happens? It feels like unforgiveness. It feels like you're in prison because you're always trying to control that person in your mind. You have these little make-believe conversations with them. You say, well, if they ever say this, I'm going to say that. I'm going to get after them. I'm going to put them in their place. And revenge gets to be this miserable place. And every time you have idle time, your mind goes toward, what can I do to get back at that person? And sometimes this lasts for years. And so here's what I want you to understand. I want you to understand that forgiveness, when someone has hurt you, is not for that other person. It's for you. Because you're going to feel trapped, imprisoned, stuck, and unable to function as long as you're still trying to control that person and through your thoughts and through what you would like to be able to do to them and how you would like to be able to exact your revenge. And so even if you don't believe the Bible, it's an easy thing to sit here and say, I'm going to forgive people. It's not letting them off the hook. It's not saying that they did something they shouldn't have done. It's not saying that you're excusing what they did and it's permissible and they can do it again. It's none of those things. What it really is saying, look, I'm going to forgive the people who have hurt me. And sometimes something happens to you and the hurt is so deep and it's so profound and it's so lingering that it's something that lasts for years. And I've had really good people tell me over the years, you just don't understand. Look, I know that God says that we should forgive one another. And if we don't forgive one another, there's going to be problems. And I know that forgiveness is for me, but you just don't understand what happened to me. You don't know the story. You don't know what he said. You don't know what she did. You don't know where we were when it happened. And so you hear those stories and you think, yeah, I want to come that way and help you with that. And yeah, I agree with you. I want to get on your side. But no, it's saying, I'm going to forgive them no matter what. And so the last thing I want to talk with you about today is, what do you do when you've got a hurt that's so deep and so lingering and so painful that you have a hard time forgiving someone who has hurt you? And there's some real specific steps that if you've got something you feel like, I just can't shake this, I can't shake what's happened to me, that you can take to find freedom and get out of the prison that you're trapped in.
grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like a sound of a symphony in my ears. It's like holy water, your forgiveness. It's like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony in my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. It's like holy water on my skin. It's like holy water.
So we've been talking about forgiveness for a few minutes. We probably ought to stop and define it for just a moment, right? So forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not pretending something never happened. Forgiveness is not burying things under the rug and ignoring them. Forgiveness is choosing to live with the circumstances in spite of what's happened. Choosing to live with the circumstances in spite of what's happened. That's what I'm going to do. Somebody said something to me, somebody did something to me, and I'm going to live with that and forgive them, because just like we talked about earlier, can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, can't put the words back in someone's mouth. Once they're spoken, once the action has happened, we can't do anything about it. It's happened, and we've got to determine, am I going to live with that, or am I going to let that control me? So sometimes what happens to us is we have a situation where the hurt is so bad and so difficult and so painful that it lingers, and it feels like it's impossible for us to be able to forgive them. And so here's what happens. This is what Jesus talks about it. He says it's a debt. It is a relationship debt. They have done something to you, and now they owe you. They have taken something from you. They've taken your dignity. They've taken your reputation. They've taken your property. They've taken your thought. They've taken your love. They've done something to you that was yours, and they have taken it from you. And so now they owe you, and they are in your debt. And so that's how Jesus talks about forgiveness, and that's the context he uses. He says that it involves someone who owes you something. Somebody who owes you something from their past that is keeping you from living the way you should be living in the present. So here's what we're going to do. When somebody has hurt you, and maybe it's mom, maybe it's dad, maybe it's a sister or brother, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a former business partner, maybe it was your ex-wife or your ex-husband, and something it's hurt and it's deep and it's difficult. And they might not even be willing to have a conversation with you. And they don't want to talk with you, they're not interested in it, but you can still do something here. And what happens is the Bible describes this as a spiritual transaction that takes place. And so what you're going to do is you're going to say, I'm going to cancel this debt. And so here's what you do, okay? This is going to sound a little weird at first, but I promise you this will make a huge difference and get you to a place where you can be set free and quit being trapped in unforgiveness. And it's just very simply this. Get a piece of paper and write down the name of the person, and we'll just call him Bubba for this afternoon, right? We'll just call him Bubba. And so you say, Bubba owes me for, and be very specific about it, for saying that I'm a liar. Bubba owes me for yelling at me about being a liar. And be very, very specific. And think of every single instance of what's happened and all the things that you need to charge him with what he took from you. He took your reputation, he took your love, he took your property, whatever. And be very specific with that and write down and say, he owes me, he owes me, he owes me. Okay? And then what you want to do is maybe you put a chair in front of you if that helps. Or if not, you can just sit there, but say it out loud. Read that list. Bubba owes me for, and read every single thing on that list. Say it out loud. And then you come back and you say, I cancel this debt that Bubba has with me for each one of those things. He says, Bubba called me a liar. I cancel that debt. Bubba yelled at me. I cancel that debt. And you just work your way through that list and say, I cancel it, I cancel it, I cancel it, I cancel it. And then you say, so Bubba, I forgive you for all these things. And then what's going to happen is you're going to think at some point in the future, you're going to think, no, I didn't really forgive him. No, you did, because something happened right there. And you're going to be tempted to think, no, I didn't really forgive him. So what you need to do, you need to have some kind of little ceremony or something. You know, I don't know, maybe you write all the stuff down, say, I cancel all his debt, and then you shred that piece of paper. Maybe you take that piece of paper and you stuff it into a bottle and put some rocks in it and you throw it in the bottom of a lake. Maybe you go out and you bury it in the backyard. Maybe you go and you go get a lighter and you light that list and say, okay, it's done, it's over with, it's finished. But that's how it works. If you'll be very specific and not just say, hey, I forgive you, but I cancel the debt for every single detail, and then also I forgive you for those things. Now, and here's the great thing about this, is that will work and that will give you freedom when you feel like that someone has hurt you, when you feel like that you need to forgive that person who's hurt you, when you feel like that you need to forgive yourself. You can do the same thing for yourself. Like, I've let myself down. I didn't do the things I wanted to do by the time I was 35 years old. I missed my goals. I've screwed things up. You can do that with yourself. And check this out. If you feel like that God owes you something, that God took something from you. Now, the truth is God never sins, and God hasn't done anything to hurt you. God does things to help you. But you can follow that same process, and you can go through that process, and you feel like that God has hurt you, you can do that. And you can walk away from the imprisonment that you're in, and you can find freedom. And I think this is huge for a lot of people who are watching this. You feel like especially that somebody somewhere who's a Christian, who's a church person or a church hurt you. And that's the reason you'll say, I'll never go back to church. I'll never be around people like that again. What you should do is you should do that process I just described and if you want to, put the name of that church in there. Put, this church owes me, this church owes me, this church owes me. And then you go back and say, I cancel that debt, I cancel that debt, I cancel that debt. Because you weren't meant to live in isolation. God created us to live in community, in close relationship with other people. And you should be in relationship with other people. And the reason that you haven't been connected with a group of people at a church in a long time is because somebody did something to you in church. You should work through that process with the name of that church that I just went through. Does that make sense? Listen, I know this is hard. I know it's difficult. I'm praying for you that as people watch this, that they'll find freedom. And what they'll do is they'll say, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk out of the prison cell that I'm in, and I'm going to go find freedom.
Well, that just about wraps up our episode on forgiveness. We pray that this thing has been impactful to you. Maybe it's kind of giving you that nudge that you need to go forgive somebody in your life that has hurt you and that has wronged you. You know, we need that nudge from time to time in our life, and forgiveness is so important. So take that step and forgive the person in your life. Now, if Mosaic has been impactful to you, we would absolutely love to know that. Send us an email at hello@southcrest.church. Drop us a line. Maybe it was a past episode or maybe it was this episode that's really helped you. We'd love to hear that. Also, if you'd like to support this ministry financially, all you got to do is go to southcrest.church/give. There you'll have a drop-down menu and you'll be able to select online campus. Mosaic is a part of our online campus here. And your donation, your support will just help us further this ministry, reaching people in our community and around the world. And that's so exciting about what God has for us in the future. And as always, man, hit that share button. Let people know that you're watching Mosaic. And we can't wait to see you next week. And have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.